everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. This is so exciting. We are here to do a special bonus podcast, and I'm Rachel. Amber's here.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, and we have a very special guest today, somebody that Amber and I have been big fans of for a long time. And we have Survivor Reporter, whatever you want to say, reality show. Is that correct to say?
Yeah, we're
reality reporter Gordon Holmes is here, and we're really excited to have you on our little podcast and we're going to talk about the movie Leap of Faith, and we're going to talk about maybe a little bit of Survivor also, because we really like movies and we really like Survivor. So thanks for coming on our show.
Oh, of course. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm psyched to talk about Leap of Faith. And, Survivor is a very important part of my life. So whatever questions you guys got, I want to hear them.
Yay. Great. Well, that's great. So why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us a little bit about how you became the reporter that you currently are, how you got used to your current position.
Sure. My name is Gordon Holmes. You can see me on Twitter at Gordon Holmes. I work for Comcast Xfinity, and I report on many things, but the one I'm most known for is Survivor. The way I got into that was I used to actually be a commerce reporter, talking about, things that like shopping and things along those lines. Mm-hmm. And CBS went up to our television team and said, hey, does anybody want to go to Africa and sleep in a tent and interview the cast of Survivor? And to a person, they all said no. And when I heard this, I was furious because I was a huge Survivor fan. And I said, hey, if they're not interested, I will sleep in a dome tent in the middle of Africa and love every second of it. And they sent me out, and then that became my gig. I actually ended up switching over to the TV team and managing the TV team. Recently, I actually was switched over to video games, but I've still maintained the Survivor coverage portion of my job. Mm-hmm. So, once a year, I get to sneak out there, interview the cast, interview Jeff Probst, interview the crew, see the first couple days of shooting. I didn't get to go this past season. But I've been doing that for the past 10 years.
Oh my gosh, we're so jealous.
So would that have been Gabon?
Yes, my debut season was Survivor Gabon.
That's a fun season.
Yeah, it's funny because being you ever hear someone on the radio and you're like, oh, they sound just like they do on the radio. Of course they do. It was the same kind of situation where I was surrounded by, Corinne Kaplan and, 15 other people you probably don't remember from Survivor Gabon, just being like, these people, they're real, like Ace Gordon, he's going to be the next big villain in Survivor. I know it. Didn't turn out that way.
Didn't turn out that way.
My predictions are notoriously horrific.
Mm.
But I guess you're probably one of the only people who, like, Gabon has a really special place in your heart.
Yeah, it really does. Like, when I went out there, Dalton Ross for Entertainment Weekly was out there, like the normal CBS crew, Amar Reinstein from Us Weekly. It was kind of all old hat to them at that point. But to me, like, Gabon really does hold a very special place in my heart.
Mm-hmm. It was beautiful. It's probably one of the most beautiful places, I think, unique that they've ever filmed.
Yeah, really unique. And I think the interesting thing is going out there, I expected Survivor to be like 20 people in tents with like, elephants and leopards and whatnot, like 5 feet away. It was the exact opposite. Whereas, the amount of people it takes to put on Survivor, not just, what you see as far as, the cast and Jeff Probst, but, the film crew, the dream team, the people that run the challenge, the people that do the laundry for the crew, the people that cook for the crew, hundreds, maybe even like thousands of people. It was a little city. And that was back like, nowadays, they shoot in Fiji and there's a really cool resort where everybody gets to stay. But back then it was just like a sea of dome tents that was responsible for putting on the show. And, it sounds hokey to say this, but it really did change my life in a lot of ways, and I'm very thankful for Survivor. Don't tell Jeff Probst I said that; he'll go right to his head. But very thankful for what that show has done for me.
Are the dimples as amazing in real life?
Oh, you sound like my mom. Every time I go out there, she has some weird flirty thing I'm supposed to tell Jeff, but I always forget to tell her. Although when we went out for South Pacific, it was one of the Redemption Island seasons, and I forgot what I'd asked him, and he said he something about Redemption Island, and he's like, we should send your mom to Redemption Island because she's responsible for bringing you into this world, and you're the worst, and blah blah blah. And he got halfway through this joke, and then he kind of paused, and he's like, "This sounds terrible." And I'm like, "Yeah, you sound like a real jerk." He's like, "Let's redo this," and then he went and reworked it. So for her, because she had to put up with me, her redemption was, Redemption Island would be this paradise where they would rub her feet and take care of her. And ever since she saw that, every time she's like, "Don't forget to tell Jeff that he has to send me to Special Redemption Island where they rub her feet." Like, you got it, Mom.
I love your mom. She's my favorite.
I'm fond of her too.
She's already our faves. Yeah. So do you
Does
have
your mom watch Hallmark movies?
What's that?
Does your mom watch Hallmark movies?
My father watches a lot of Hallmark movies.
Yes.
In fact, I don't. This might not fall because this is technically on the Up network, but there's a TV show called Heartland. Are you familiar with Heartland?
We're very familiar with Heartland.
My father is like next level obsessed with Heartland.
Well, you can tell him that you talk to people who have talked to Cindy Busby, aka Ashley, and he'll be so excited.
At my wedding, he was the best man at my wedding, and I got gifts for everybody. And for the guys, I got whatever it was. But for him in particular, I went and got an autographed picture of Amber Marshall. And I was very worried about giving it to him beforehand because I figured he'd just sit in a corner looking at it instead of, coming out and being my best man.
Yeah.
But he was cool. He was cool about it.
Yeah, he did. He put it he put it down for a brief period of time to come out and enjoy the wedding. The funny thing is Sierra Dawn Thomas actually is a barrel racer.
Yeah.
And I've been on her for years. I'm like, you got to watch Heartland so my dad can have a Heartland pen pal.
Yes.
I haven't got her to watch it.
Yeah, it's surprising how many men actually do watch Hallmark movies. Like, I would never, until I dove into this world 100%, I would never have guessed that. But there's more than you'd think. There really are.
That has really been a lot of my friends' fathers, my father-in-law, a lot of my, that seems to be like the new trend is that, I don't know. And I don't know if it's just getting back to, like something nice and not violent and that, but it seems to be really popular amongst older gentlemen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Retired gentlemen are our bread and butter.
Yeah. Right.
Shout out to all the retired folks listening.
So do you have a favorite season of Survivor, and do you have a favorite players who you just get really excited about when they return?
Well, as far as a favorite season, my wife did not watch Survivor for the longest time, and then she recently got into it. And we were talking about if you were to get somebody into a season, what would you show them to get them hooked? And I have Amazon Prime, and I'm very bad about this, is I'll have a TV show on while I do digital art or any other hobbies, messing around on my phone. I'm very bad at actually focusing on things. But I had on Heroes versus Villains recently. Boy, that cast of characters, Russell Hantz at his worst, really sucked me in. And so if I had to pick a favorite, I would probably go with that one. It just really, really is probably my all-time favorite. And as far as favorite players, Malcolm Freeberg is, of course, my boyfriend. His name is very close to my wife's name, so if I'm texting, I'll accidentally text him every now and then. I was late to pick my wife up for something. I was like, I'm stuck on Route 30 or whatever, and he was furious. Texting her instead of him. But as far as watching people, your Boston Robs, your Russells are fun. Parvati's a good friend of mine. I love to watch her. But you know what? I think if I had to pick one, I might go with Coach. As far as like, some people get on the show and they're doing shtick and they're playing up. I think Coach is very much the real deal, and that what you're seeing is really him. He's a great guy, very sensitive about how he's portrayed. Just someone I've always been like very fond of. Really enjoyed him on the show. So, but with my I don't know if you know this, but I have a notoriously horrible memory. So if you ask me tomorrow, there might be a different answer. But for today, it's Coach.
Very good.
I completely approve of that. Coach is, he created a casting type that I don't think anyone has ever really seen. And he wasn't, like you said, he was just being himself. He's incredible. And just for the record, Token Teens is the season that I always introduce people to Survivor on.
Oh, what about Token Teens? Do you think hooks people?
Well, I think it's very, as far as, the tribe dynamics and all that, it's very simple. There's not a swap before the merge. They have idols, so that introduces that, so it's not completely old school. And then, it's got a very compelling narrative for the JT Steven bromance. And then it's got a lot of the fun extra characters. I think it touches on all the things that I love about Survivor. And it does it in a way that's not super complicated. The strategy is pretty simple, but there's still some twists and good lies. And I think it's a good way to get people introduced to the storytelling and the strategy of Survivor, along with the rules.
Good call. That's an interesting angle to take. I was like I said with Heroes and Villains, I was watching it and it was the scene where, spoiler alert, where Russell gets the idol from JT. And there's a point where Russell, who we all know is the devil, bows and nods as he's pretending that he's on the outs. And I was just, and it's, to have that kind of the reaction I had, knowing what was happening, having seen it before, I just absolutely adored it. So,
do you think that season is more fun though, if you know why they're a hero and why they're a villain?
I think
if you're new,
I think that they might do a good job of, reminding you, in there, I'm here because I did this and I did that, kind of similar to what they did with all of the twists in Ghost Island. So.
I think for me, I would have zero chance of convincing anybody in my family to watch Survivor. That is not happening. But if they were going to, I think I might suggest the Amazon, because even though there's no idols, I just feel like it's not very mean-spirited. It's pretty fun. You have Matthew and the crazy axe, and you have I think pretty, for the most part, likable players. I don't know, my family might be a little scandalized by the peanut butter and Oreos, but other than that, I think I don't know, I just feel like that season has a little bit of everything, and you have the best player ever in Rob Sestradino. No, really, he is one of my favorites. But I also I love Cagayan. I don't know if it's the best introduction because it's so weird compared to others, but it is so entertaining, and Tony is so entertaining, and what he manages to pull off, I was just, to me, that season has not been topped since.
I think those are both really solid choices. And, we joke about Rob, but I absolutely credit Rob with getting me back into Survivor. I was one of those people, day one watching it, fell in love with it in Borneo, and then kind of got kind of fell out of love with it, for lack of a better term. Just because I found the strategy very stale, and then Sesternino showed up and really truly changed the game. Don't tell him I said this, but I absolutely do credit him with reviving my interest in the game. And then it really didn't lull after that, because then from there you lead the Pearl Islands and All Stars, and then and then it becomes a career. So again, keep this between us, but don't.
My favorite players and I guess it's just hometown bias, but I do love Todd Herzog. I think China is actually kind of an underrated season. I think that one's really fun. I also love Dawn Meehan. I know a lot of people thought she was annoying, but I liked her because I felt like if I was going to play Survivor, that is exactly what would happen to me, because when I'm hungry and I'm tired, I get emotional and I cry. And I think I would, because people
# Survivor breakdown.
Yeah, because like the thing is that people bond with me quickly sometimes, and I bond with them very quickly, and I feel like it would be very difficult. I think I would be terrible at Survivor. Do you think you'd be good at Survivor, Gordon?
First of all, real quick, Todd Herzog, no shame there, and then no shame at all with Dawn Meehan, one of my favorite people on the show.
Yeah.
Adore her. As far as, do I think I would be good on the show? I think I would. I think I'm sneaky good at challenges. I'm 6 foot. I'm not like super built, but every time you go out there, you run a challenge. They have the press run a challenge so that we can get beat up by the dream team, and they can be like, haha, see how hard it is, losers. But actually had like a pretty decent winning streak going on there for a while. My lifetime challenge record is 9-2. So in your face, John Kerhofer challenge.
If I recall correctly, you guys like crushed the spoke wheel challenge, right? I mean, that puzzle. Maybe
my proudest moment is that we were behind, and Josh Wigler and I, they said that we broke it. They said that if the strategy we used became common knowledge, then the puzzle would be useless because we figured it out.
Yeah, you're basically just puzzle geniuses.
Basically, like the press is Ozzy. And another reason I think I might do well is I don't need to be an alpha. I don't have that in me. I think I would do really well cozying up to some big brawny meathead and letting him think he's running the show. So I think I would do all right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would do good in the swimming challenges because I'm a good swimmer. But yeah, I don't know. I just and Dawn played really, really well, so she did much better than I would do. But I just think I just really related to her as a player. I think very much. Right. And but Amber, what you think? You'd be good at Survivor, right?
Yeah, I would.
I think you would.
Yeah, I would.
Because I present as this like really nice, trustworthy person, and I like really care about people, but like underneath it all, I'm just like a total jerk, and like I'm really good at lying. It's just they wouldn't stand a chance, and I'd be a terrible villain.
I think the one thing that might eat me alive is I am not good with paranoia. And it's something I think a lot of people don't think about when they're out there. And when I was interviewing Cochran before he went back for fans' favorites, we were talking about this. How's that for name drop? And he said, I'm like, do people appreciate like how much paranoia plays into this? Because I imagine, if I'm sitting there feeling good about my game and then you run off into the woods with somebody else, I'm going to freak out. And he mentioned it's not just that. It's not just me and somebody else. It's me, somebody else, a camera person, an audio person, a producer, like tromping off, and you have no idea what we're talking about. He's like, and it will eat you alive. And I know, like at work or at anything, if I'm not 100% comfortable with things like that, my mind will go a mind a minute. And that's something that could come up and bite me.
Yeah. I'm trying to think who someone like Ty was pretty like paranoid. Someone like that. I don't know. That's the first one I can think of a character who just really struggled with that. It's really interesting, and I thank you for indulging us because we don't get to talk about Survivor, so this was really fun.
I know you guys are so off-brand right now.
I know.
And our listeners just have to deal with it because it's our podcast. We can do what we want, like I said.
Get to the leap of faith. Fast forward to 30 minutes.
So now we will get into the main point of our. So you had said on Twitter that you wanted to talk on a podcast about Leap of Faith, and I was like, well, I want to talk to Gordon Holmes, so let's do this. And so tell us about this. tell us about your feelings about this movie and why you love it.
Okay, so what happened was I am a notorious night owl. I keep the worst possible hours. And my wife had gone to sleep, and I had recently bought a treadmill and was going to go down to the basement and put it together, but I was kind of bopping around upstairs. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to take 5 minutes and watch something. And I went on Amazon Prime, and there's Leap of Faith, which I adore. And I'm like, I'm going to watch 5 minutes of this. And then an hour later, I'm like, go, stop. So I turn it off, and I go downstairs thinking that I can put it on in the TV down there and finish it off while I do the treadmill. But I couldn't get Amazon Prime working on the TV downstairs. So the next night, my wife, she goes to bed at a decent hour because she's a sane human being. And she's like, do you want to watch something before I go to bed? Wanting to watch something short. And I'm like, oh, let's watch the end of Leap of Faith. And she's like, oh, okay. So I put it on, and then we finish it. And then it ends up back at the entity page for, Leap of Faith. And then it just says, to start it over, you just have to hit a button once. So I make the mistake of doing that, and then we proceed to watch the whole beginning hour again. So I was in a very Leap of Faith frame of mind, and the next day tweeted, I'm like, hey, if anybody ever wants to talk about Leap of Faith, I'm ready.
Yeah.
Because I just watched it 1.5 times. So should I describe the show for the
Yeah, please. Yeah, tell us a little bit about it, and then maybe a little bit why you liked it so much.
Okay. So for the uninitiated, and if you're listening to this podcast, you should go watch it first. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
So Leap of Faith is a story of a traveling revival show that goes from town to town and puts on, their religious performance, with like faith healing and things along those lines. And it's understood that the person in charge of this, Jonas Nightingale, which is played by Steve Martin, is a shady guy. It's a scam. They have earpieces. They heal people that don't need to be healed. All these kinds of things. Like it's a scam. So basically, they usually play the big cities, but one of their trucks breaks down, so they have to play in a smaller town. And then over the course of the movie, there's a sheriff that realizes that he's crooked and tries to out him to the townspeople, because the townspeople are, they're losing jobs. All of their crops are in trouble due to lack of rain. This sheriff doesn't think they can afford him. Right. He doesn't want people giving them, their money because they can't afford them. So he's trying to stop him at every chance he can, sending the fire department down to check the tent and things along those lines. Should I do the full recap?
Yeah, okay. No, we'll talk about the ending and stuff like that as we go. Okay. But yeah, so why did what is it that especially spoke to you about this film?
Well, Leap of Faith is basically 80% The Music Man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a musical theater guy. My wife and I met during a production of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum.
Oh.
She was Feely and I was Hero. We were romantic interests. And basically, The Music Man has been something that's been really important to me in my life. When I was young, my sister dragged me to see her boyfriend in a musical, and I was a punk kid. I'm like, I don't want to watch musicals, singing and dancing. It's gross. But it was a production of The Music Man, and I sat there and watched it and just absolutely fell in love with it, and didn't realize until like 90% of the way through that her boyfriend was nowhere on stage. Turns out at the end of Music Man, like a band comes out during the curtain call to play the final production of 76 Trombones, and her boyfriend was in the band. So basically, she made me sit through a musical to watch, 2 minutes of her boyfriend. But like I said, I was hooked. Music Man is super important to me. I got to play Harold Hill in my 20s. That was a very important time for me. So there's a lot in common with Leap of Faith. Personally, as far as religion goes, I don't consider myself a very religious person. I consider myself very spiritual. I think I understand religion and the benefits of it, and so while it doesn't speak to me on that level, the need for faith and these people's faith really, touches me. And here's the thing. It's not a big feat to make me cry during a movie. If you put on A League of Their Own, I'm a wreck. But like the last 10 minutes of Leap of Faith just have me, it's just waterworks in the whole living room.
Cool.
So yeah, and it's one of those things where, like, I saw it when it first came out in the 90s. I'm like, that was really good. And maybe it didn't get the attention it deserves. But it holds up. Like, I was a little, like, with the exception of like Steve Martin jogging in a half shirt, like it really holds up.
Well, we have to get you into Hallmark movies because you're like our best friend, because you like Survivor, you love show tunes. I mean, this is great. And I think this is a really interesting, I didn't love it. I liked it. I didn't love it like you, but I did like it. And I think it's very interesting. I think it's a movie that makes very interesting choices. And so I was actually really excited to kind of talk about it because I don't know. Here's the thing that I wonder about. So do you think that Jonas is doing something that is in fact harmless and giving people hope, whether that hope is based on anything? Or do you think that it's bad? Do you think, and that is kind of the Music Man example is similar because he is swindling those people. But I feel like with religion, it kind of adds a little bit of another level. And I'm not sure if that makes it worse or if it makes it better. I don't know. I can't decide because he's not promising them some kind of product or service. Like, he gives them basically what he promises in this case. And as opposed to Harold, who promises a band and doesn't give them a band. I don't know. It's
objection.
Interesting.
He gives them a band.
Think, man. Think. I think, we're looking at this through the lens of, at the end of the movie, the little boy can walk and it's raining. There's a very real possibility where he brings the little boy up on stage, says, if there's doubt in your heart, he will not walk, and then he doesn't walk. Which, as has been said, the poor kid's been through that before. So without it, if you consider the little boy walking a miracle, and if you consider the rain at the end a miracle, if those two things don't happen, this is a horrible movie where this poor kid is put through this again. So I think it like, is Jonas a bad person is a rough question. One of the things I like, having watched it several times recently, one of the interesting things I've noticed is, with the exception of the little boy walking, with the exception of the rain, is this all playing according to his plan? Every little thing. Like, if you remember, before the second revival, Janie warns him that the sheriff is going to come after him. Right. And he comes out and he tells his life story, basically sets it up for the sheriff to shoot him down. Basically says, I'm different than you. I was born different. I'm better, not better, but I was born to this. Basically setting up for the sheriff to be like, nope, not true. This is his real name. He was in trouble with drugs. He boosted cars, etc., which sets it up. Like, it's almost like this has happened a million times before. They've been to a million towns with a million sheriffs who can do a search for him and learn the truth. And then he can knock it out of the park with the speech he gives after that. So yeah, like, did you just watch it the one time, Rachel?
I did just watch it the one time.
I would suggest watching it at least 7 times.
Okay, good deal. We can do that. But yeah, I know. I think it's an interesting question. I mean, and most of us aren't just heroes and villains, and so most of us are complex, and so and he's certainly no exception. I think I don't know. It's hard because he knows. It's hard because he knows what he's doing. Like, it'd be one thing if he really believed it. Sure. Then I feel like that makes him. It makes the question easier to answer, because then you know that how can you fault a person for preaching what they believe, and if miracles happen, but I don't know, it's an interesting thing that I've been thinking about. And so I don't know, I was curious. I was curious for your thoughts, like if in the end you saw him as a vindicated character or if you saw him as a scoundrel.
I don't think vindication is the right word. Because he went about his shtick the way he always does, and the fact that these miracles happened don't make what he did necessarily right. I think and you don't, when you write a villain, no villain thinks they're wrong. I think he knows that like he's shady, but the way he justifies it to himself is that speech he gives to the sheriff where he says, I give these people a good show. You go to a Broadway show, you could spend $200 and not leave humming a tune. We have good sentiment, we have good music, we have, the Angels of Mercy are amazing. So I think that's how he justifies it in his mind, that it is a good show. However, that again, I keep coming back to that part at the end where he really puts it on the sheriff that if this boy doesn't walk, it's because you don't believe, which is dangerous. I think.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, and it kind of brings the question of the sheriff. He's the skeptic, and is he the villain of the film or the hero?
That's
heroes and villains.
That's the thing. It's like it really is like he's definitely not a villain. Like he is absolutely doing what he thinks is in the best interest of this town. And when he that's interesting. Like I don't like, obviously I don't think he's a traditional villain. He's doing what he thinks is right for the community. But like I just said, every villain thinks they're doing what's right. But when things like the cold reading, like the tools they use to make it seem like they're communicating with a higher power, whether it's Janie using special words when she interviews the people in the audience, when they Emma Schlarp with her walker, with her wheelchair. All the little tricks of the trade make it seem like they're being very deceptive, because they are being very deceptive. So I don't think in any way he's been set up to appear to be a villain.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me. I think there were a few moments where I felt like, he's certainly an antagonist, but that doesn't necessarily mean a villain. And Liam Neeson is great as always in the role. I think this movie is very well acted in general. I don't know. What do you think, Amber, as far as Steve Martin in this role? Do you think because it's not I wouldn't say it's a funny movie. So it's a little bit against type. I don't know. What did you think about him?
Well, it's not necessarily, I wouldn't classify this as a comedy.
No.
He does a great job. I was like, oh, I'm a little bit moved. Let me praise Steve Martin. But it was very interesting to see him do something sort of like this. The closest thing I can think of off the top of my head would be his performance in Roxanne, where he's not necessarily he's more the straight guy in Roxanne than I'd say, obviously in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, but, or, other things, or unless absurd than he is in Father of the Bride. Anyway, I'm getting totally off topic just listing Steve Martin movies. But no, I think he did a great job selling it. The problem for me is I didn't really actually like Jonas. So it made me not want any good things to happen to him.
What about him did you find? Is it just because he's running a scam, or was it something else?
Yeah, I think he was running the scam. And towards the end, I don't know. I had a hard time with him. I really think what Gordon said was you have to watch it 7 times is probably right. Because I feel like I could enjoy it more on a rewatch than just on my initial viewing. I saw it I've seen it before in the 90s when it was on TV, but on HBO. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like I could like it more. But it's, it's that Oscar Wilde quote where it's to really see something, you have to see its beauty. And I haven't seen its beauty yet. I haven't seen Jonas's beauty.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I thought that they had enough softer moments and they do enough of his backstory to kind of I can go with him. And I think that Steve Martin is a pretty just inherently likable presence on screen. And that does help a lot. He's not quite Tom Hanks level, but I think he's pretty close for me at least. And so, it's really interesting because I think Liam Neeson is kind of the same too. He's just, so you're rooting for both these. It's interesting to see how it plays out. And, it's interesting to me because Hollywood is typically reticent to have themes of faith and themes and these kinds of themes that aren't like overtly faith-based films. And so the fact that they went with the miracle is kind of surprising, I think, at the end. And I don't know, did you find, Gordon, that to be surprising when he is healed, the boy?
Yeah. I mean, all of it is about, I guess, Jonah's redemption to some point. And, somebody who like praises, who like fakes miracles, like literally paints eyeballs onto a statue of Jesus. What would he do when faced with an honest to goodness miracle?
Yeah.
And it's like, and you were asking about people's acting. I love Steve Martin in this, with the exception of like post-miracle Steve Martin. He kind of turns it up to 11 at that point. When you watch it your 6th and 7th time, you'll definitely pick up. He's like, ooh, this might be my Oscar chance. But as far, I'm sorry, what was the question?
Well, just that they went with it, the miracle actually happening. I mean, is that kind of the easy way out? Would it have been more sort of interesting as a screenplay to have it not happen and he has to deal with that? And
obviously, it's somebody who spent his life, he's saying praise Jesus and all this, but doesn't believe it. So for him to be faced with that everything he has believed is, that he like, and he tries to deny it. They're like, we should put this kid on the road, dress him up, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And Janie's like, you really don't give an S about anybody. And he's like, I never said I did. He's still trying to be Jonas. But after he talks to the kid and the kid is the genuine article, he realizes he can't do it anymore. And that's why he leaves town. And that's why he, because, like basically he was handed a license to print money. And up until that point, that's all he cared about. So for him to walk away from that is, really his, his redemption, that like something he can't explain, something that didn't come from, putting putting a cross on his hand and pressing it on people's foreheads. Like the one bit that he had no control over was the one that really taught him that, what he was dealing with.
Mm-hmm. What did you think they were trying to say, not only with the healing, but also with the rain? Like that was definitely a very bold choice, I felt like.
What were they trying to say with the rain? I think the rain truly was just like the mega happy ending as far as to steal from Wayne's World. Where, the little boy walking is amazing. And, but the rain was really just kind of like, like one miracle maybe you could write off. Mm-hmm. But, and granted, rain, I don't think rain is necessarily a miracle, but in that instance it was. Mm-hmm. So I really think that was just you can deny that, but you can't deny these two together. And, what a great moment. Although the one, the montage of rain, there's this one where there's this like baby wandering in the rain, like crying. And like you expect, how like, if a jet gets shot down, they have to show like the pilot ejecting. So you know that he's okay or she's okay. There's no one ever comes pick up this baby. Poor baby wandering in the rain. I have like a handful of like things that my little nitpicks about the movie. One of them drives me nuts that Paradise by the Dashboard Light exists in this universe.
Yes. I was like, what? Meatloaf is here. What's happening?
Meatloaf is literally like the leader of the band. So in this universe, and then Janie and Jonas are driving somewhere and Paradise by the Dashboard Light is playing. And you want to be like, well, maybe it's in the soundtrack. Maybe they aren't hearing it. But Jonas is literally hitting the steering wheel to the beat. So it must have been on the radio. So is Meatloaf's twin in this universe?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and you get Philip Seymour Hoffman has a small part in here.
Yeah, he has like 2 whole lines.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, let's talk about Jane for a second. Like, it's interesting. I mean, because you live in a world where you talk about reality TV a lot, and some people say, oh, which is orchestrated, it's just whatever. And some shows it's obviously so, and some it's not as much. And I don't know, like, what's your take on her as a character? Like, she obviously reaches her breaking point where she's like, where she cannot, she reaches her moral breaking point. And Deborah Winger is great. She's a great actress. I don't know. What do you take about her character?
One of the things I love about Janie and Jonas is they never feel the need to explain their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
There's never, we dated and it didn't work out, or like they don't feel the need to do that, which I feel like most movies would.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, Deborah Winger's fantastic. Janie, of course, is the first one to, she's kind of Jonas's conscience in a lot of ways. The falling in love with, with the sheriff, who wouldn't? So yeah, she's just fantastic in this. I don't know where else to go other than her arc's pretty clear, is that she's on board, she's Jonas's right hand, and she falls in love. She wants companionship. The Jonas Jr., the dog, isn't going to be enough for her. And I guess the question is, where does she go from here? Does she stick around in the corn relish capital of the world and become Mrs. Sheriff?
Yeah, what do you think about her character, Amber?
Well, the cynic in me thinks that she and the sheriff get married and then it doesn't work out. And then she goes to Hollywood and now she's a producer on CBS Big Brother. But I really was thinking that because they always talk about production and their leading questions. And I was like, she would be so good at that. Anyway, but no, I thought her character was interesting, and in some ways her character, I think, is a little bit more problematic than Jonas as far as is this moral, because she knows that what they're doing is wrong and hasn't justified it to herself, but she still keeps doing it,
Uh-huh.
And there's all kinds of having watched it 40 times, I reached a point, I've really dissected this, trying to figure out who knows what and when. So for example, Jonas paints the eyes of the Jesus statue. And obviously she knows about it because she's there when he burns the shirt. He says, an oldie but a goodie, or something along those lines. However, the Tiny, who is the, he's kind of like the roadie who wears the amazing shirt. I don't know if you remember, it's white sleeveless shirt with a black mesh shirt with fringe on the sides, and then a black baseball trucker cap with a cross on it. When he comes to tell Jonas about it, Jonas kayfabes him. Sorry to use wrestling terminology, but Jonas acts like, what's going on? He's not oh, did they find it? So it's kind of, and it's kind of interesting to see who knows what. And then there's a situation where after Jonas faints during the second revival, when he says, there will be a sign from God, and it all goes to heck because the sheriff comes out and tries to out him, and he does a spiel about, he's right and I'm the worst, but all that things, members of the choir are shocked. I don't know if they're acting because they've done this bit a million times, but are the Angels of Mercy in on the shtick? So it's very but obviously if Jonas is 1, then Jane is 1A, because they're both in on everything.
Yeah.
Well, and what's interesting too is they have this sort of fail safe that if the miracle doesn't come true, they can just say, oh, well, it's the sheriff's fault for not believing or bringing skepticism into the room. But what's interesting is because it actually happens, then all of a sudden Jonas is the one that didn't have the faith, and everybody else had the faith, and which is kind of interesting. And I mean, I'm a person who I believe in miracles, and I believe in I mean, I'm a very religious person, so I think that would be if I can picture God being all right, let's teach them a little bit of a lesson here. This is good. I don't know. It's an interesting thing. It's an interesting experiment, I think. And I feel like this, like I said, I feel like this movie makes a lot of really bold choices, and because you have Marva, who's also a cynic because she has believed in so many people before and they've let her down, and not only that, but they have blamed Boyd's in his condition or whatever on his like that it's psychosomatic, and that that it's basically his fault, and I don't know. So I think she's also interesting too. There's like all these different sort of versions of cynicism and skepticism and stuff, and you have like a real miracle happen, and then how do people respond to it? And there are things that happen every day in this world that we cannot explain and that we don't understand. And I'm not saying that God is behind all of those. That's for everyone to decide themselves. But I think it's an interesting thought experiment to say, here's something that all of these people with all these different levels of cynicism can explain, and let's talk about it. I think where it might lose some people is some people might struggle with that being kind of an inspirational journey because of Jonas, because it started as such a scam, and I think they might struggle kind of with the ending. That feel like, I don't know. I think some people might struggle with that ending.
See, my take has always been, like I said, I'm not particularly religious, but I appreciate religion.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a really popular opinion these days to be like, oh, you believe in an invisible person in the sky, that's dumb.
Right.
Which is that's an easy thing to say. Like that, it's easy to doubt such as that. Whereas who's to say who's right or wrong? But faith and fellowship and community are all good things. Like they're all they bring people solace. So the fact that like you said, I think that's a really interesting point you brought up, is that Jonas is the non-believer in the room, and I actually hadn't thought about this, and I've seen the movie 40 times. Rachel and T brought that up. It's like Jonas is the cynic in the situation.
With Boyd.
With Boyd. My wife. Geez, my wife refers to him as the boy from Witness. Like that's all she considers.
Yes, that is correct. That is who that is. Correct.
She's like, I just want to hug him. He's the boy from Witness.
For me, he is the boy from The Lady in White.
Okay.
I've heard of that.
It's a very strange show, and especially super strange that my parents let me watch it as a child. But
okay, I thought this was on. I assumed you guys were putting together a list of Hallmark movies that I need to check out.
Oh well, we can, but
if I can give you the homework of watching this 7 times, then you can.
I mean, the easy way would be like just watch the ones with Lisa Whelchel and Matt Elrod.
Yeah, but like I was saying, like to take someone like me who again does not have a religious background, and to watch this and to feel from it, it's like it's good. Like whether or not God exists, it's good that these people are coming together. It's good that they're sharing this community. It's good that they're pulling for this young man to walk. And the fact that they're rewarded is very inspirational to me. Mm-hmm. People from different backgrounds might take different things from it, but like I said, last 10 minutes of this movie, I'm a wreck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I mean, it definitely draws you in for sure. And I mean, why do you think in the end Jonas decides to leave?
I think he's overwhelmed, to be honest. I imagine thinking you're a fraud for however long they've been doing this, and they've got like I imagine it's quite some time, and then how could you get up on that stage, think and do what you do when you're faced with that, when you're faced with the fact that it worked and there is a higher power, and I would imagine it's just and at one point they're like, are you in some kind of trouble? And he says, maybe for the first time in my life I'm not. So in some ways maybe this is a clean slate for him. Maybe I'd imagine it would be overwhelming for someone like that to be faced with something like that. It's kind of like I believe there's kind of like the urban legend of the professor that challenges his students to prove that God exists, and if God exists, he will stop this egg from breaking, and he drops the egg, and it bounces off his foot. And then, when you're faced with something like that must be overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think? Amber, do you think that Jonas will go on to a clean life, or what do you picture for him after this movie?
Well, so for me, the ending was kind of interesting because I was trying to figure out why he was leaving. And I probably would have better insight on the 37th rewatch. But I found myself thinking that he was leaving because he knew he would end up making the wrong choice if he stayed. That's why he left, like, in the middle of the night, in my mind. Because once the miracle happened, and I think it's easy to discount a miracle, right? Like, you see something miraculous happen and you think that's circumstance. Right. But I think the more impactful thing than seeing the real miracle was when he took the walk through the camp, right? And he saw the real applications of what he was doing. And he saw, the goodness of all the people, coming together as a community and providing food, and the characters that we had seen throughout the show getting healed or seeking whatever they were seeking from him, finding something in each other. And I think in that moment, he was like, I think that's when he really changed. And so I think he left so that he wouldn't go and take the boy on the road and exploit the miracle. Mm-hmm. Whereas, I mean, I feel like if he were to even just stay around with the rest of the crew, I don't think he would have the strength to not do it. Like, like how alcoholics, you shouldn't go to bars, or if you're recovering from drug addiction, you can't hang out with all of your friends who still do drugs. You have to, find new and supportive environment. So I hope he does, but
I think
that'd be tough.
I think that's a really good point, Amber.
Yeah, I think I think the temptation will be strong, and I wouldn't be surprised if he, it ends up being some variation on this, but very similar. I don't know, like a picture of selling cars, but very bombastically or something like that. Step right up kind of a thing. I don't know, doing something that is very energetic, at least. You'd hope so. You'd hope that, I think you hope at the end of, you have hope at the end of Music Man, and you have hope at the end of this. I mean, that's the whole point of the movie, I think, is that that they're, even in the worst among us, there's hopefully some good deep down inside. And I think that was what they were trying to do with Jonas's backstory of, like an orphan and all of that stuff, kind of like whenever you can sort of walk in someone's shoes and understand the person what made them the person that they are, like that can't help but, it's not that it excuses bad behavior, but it just helps you understand it at least a little bit. And I know, my grandfather was a very talented man in many ways, but he could also be a very angry man. But I would try to remember that he had a extremely horrible childhood, and it did. If I could remember that, it would help to deal with that. And I think that's why they kind of put that in, is that, and he doesn't want Boyd to have a horrible childhood. I think he genuinely does feel some connection with Boyd, and I don't know. So it's an interesting thing that they have. So yeah, I really appreciate you getting me to watch this movie, because it's a thinking movie. I think it's a very unusual movie, and I enjoyed watching it and thinking about it. Anyway, so I appreciate it. And we should note that that there was a musical based on.
So mad at you guys.
based on this movie, written by Ellen Bacon and Glenn Slater, the people who did Tangled, which is super exciting. I mean, Ellen Bacon's a legend. And the lead, Raul Esparza, who is my favorite Broadway star, amazing. And it was a huge flop. It did terrible. But I'm hoping that this will maybe, because it did get nominated for a Tony, Best Musical. And I'm hoping that maybe this can have like a Newsies thing, like like Alan Menken, you know, his bad musicals like get revived and then they're great. So because I enjoyed it. Did you get to listen to the soundtrack at all or that video?
This is why I'm so mad at you. Like I'd said to my wife over the weekend, I'm like, man, they should make a Leap of Faith musical because one of my favorite things in the show, my wife's actually a church music director.
Oh, cool.
And every now and then I will sing Are You Ready for a Miracle to annoy her. I have like a long list of things I do to annoy her, but that's one of my favorites. And I'm always trying to get her to incorporate that into her, into her repertoire. And so I was like, oh, that'd be great if there's a musical. I mean, basically it's Music Man, so what's the point? And then you guys sent me the link that was like, check it out. And I was like, the best. I was so excited. I like, you know, I kind of like cleared like my schedule because like I said, I always have 3 or 4 things going on at a time as far as like a laptop in my lap, a TV, and a phone, blah, 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 because I'm always multitasking, but I'm like, I'm going to sit and listen to this. And I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And there was the Angel of Mercy songs were not in there.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like that was a big mistake.
It's like
not just use like the amazing soundtrack from the movie.
Yeah, it's like if you did School of Rock and didn't have Teacher's Pet in there. It was heartbreaking.
They did a School of Rock musical.
Yeah, I know, but they included it, right, Joel?
Teacher's Pet is in there. Oh, so sad.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't mind it. I thought it was. I mean, I have been listening to it and I quite enjoyed it. But it's not like my favorite thing I've ever heard. But I did enjoy it. So, did you listen to it then, Amber, at all, or
the soundtrack?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like I had the same kind of problems with it that Gordon did because I mean, Ready for a Miracle is just like super iconic and amazing. And to not have that in the musical is insane. Yeah. It was just like the craziest choice they could have made. And
there's a montage, a song that the Angels of Mercy sing over the montage where they're going around town, introducing themselves to people. They're building the tent and all this. And I'm not going to try to sing it, but I don't remember the title of it. But it's just like a really moving piece. Uh-huh. And I was like, ooh, I can't wait to hear musical theater people sing this. And then it didn't exist.
Oh, yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Well, I guess Alan Menken has his flops, and it only had 20 shows, so it's
because everybody went into the into the theater going, "Are you ready for a miracle?" And then it didn't happen, and they were mad.
Yeah, clearly
they were ready for a miracle, and they did not get one.
Well, if you want to hear Raul Esparza just be the most amazing singer ever, he was in a version of Company, Stephen Sondheim's Company. It's just incredible. It's an incredible production, and his singing is just the best, in my opinion.
Was he Bobby?
What's that?
Was he Bobby?
Yeah. Yeah, he was Bobby. And his singing of Being Alive is just incredible. It's fantastic. And so yeah, it's an interesting little blip of this movie. So yeah, Alan Menken, there you go.
I feel like the listeners of this podcast are getting a wide variety of subjects from us.
Yeah, they're so used to it. We don't ever talk about what we're supposed to.
We do tend to go on tangents quite a bit, but they seem to like it. So hey. So this was really fun. I had a great time, and anytime you want to suggest a movie for us to watch and talk about, let's do it.
Good deal. Yeah. This was a ton of fun. Like I said, like sometimes I just like fall down like the rabbit hole with some things, and this was kind of something that I was on the train to work. And I'm like, I have so much to say about this, and nobody to say it to.
Yay! Yes. Well, great, and we will make that list of Hallmark movies.
All right.
You want it to be just Christmas or year round?
You guys are the experts, so I yield to your
I feel like most people find Christmas more palatable.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Especially for like the novice. Right?
No, this will be a good. So we'll make you a list of like 5 to 7.
Okay.
And then maybe you could do a second podcast where we talk about
All right.
it. That'd
And
be
you
fun.
guys watch Leap of Faith 8 times each.
Okay. Well, great. Well, thanks again so much. This is so fun. And so where can people find you on social media and all those things, different things, fun stuff that you do?
Oh, sure. So, Survivor's right around the corner, David versus Goliath. The best way to find me tends to be on Twitter, Gordon Holmes, GordonHolmes. You can also find me on Instagram at Gordon W. Holmes, same spelling with a W right in the middle. We'll be having, we have episode recaps, exit interviews with the eliminated players on Thursday, and power rankings with a yet-to-be-named cast member from Survivor Ghost Island.
Ooh, great.
All right.
That'll be fun. Now, we'll have links for all that in the description section. You can definitely check it out. And Amber, where can people find you?
As always, I'm at Amber Brainwaves on Twitter, and that's it.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews on iTunes and on YouTube. Check that out. And make sure you're following the podcast at Hallmarkies Pod on Instagram, Twitter, and we're on all the places that you can listen to podcasts and on YouTube. If you can put in your reviews of the podcast on iTunes, really appreciate it, because then more people get to find us. And so thank you very much. Thanks so much, Gordon. We really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, thank you. This was a blast.
It really was. So, and we'll talk next time.
All right.
Okay, bye.